I recommend to people make the decision yourself so that other people don't make it for you.
Welcome to The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Keys to Your Legacy podcast. I am joined by Bill Gross, a realtor in Southern California who focuses on a really particular practice. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. I love talking about this topic in particular. Of course, I love talking with you anytime, but this is really my passion in my business.
Fantastic. That's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And just remember, most of our listeners are actually laypersons. Any complicated statements, just try to keep them simple.
Well, I've been in real estate longer than most people in alive these days, since 1986. But I really relaunched my business for some personal reasons about 6 years ago and was looking for a niche to really focus in on. And I had realized over time that so many people had problems with the transfer of generational value, whether it be somebody passing or somebody being sick. And so I really learned to specialize. It took some time to learn some classes. And then I went to the courthouse in LA daily for a while to really listen in on hearings and learn and see firsthand the problems people had who didn't have proper estate plans or had estate plans with improper attorneys, for example, or didn't have the right representation. And it's got to the point where I was in court and saw a young woman who my wife and I knew her mother and father, and her father was in a conservatorship. He was ill, unable to manage his own affairs. And here was this nice young woman managing millions of dollars worth of property and responsible for the whole family. And so I've really made a commitment to get involved in this area and to teach people. Anybody who owns a house in California should have an estate plan. Anybody who's had an estate plan, I think for 5 years or more, should make sure it's reviewed and up to date, because you don't want to find out the hard way that you're not really planned for the future as best as you can be. So that's been something I've worked on intensely. I have a podcast called Probate Weekly, where we talk about these issues. I interview attorneys. I've had you on and like to talk about that with people across the country.
Thanks so much for doing that. It's such an important thing. The area of law that I work in is really obscure. It's not well understood. And taking it from the perspective of somebody who just bought a house, it actually makes sense why they might have never approached it. And it's because you never approach it until you actually experience a death or some severe medical issue. It just doesn't happen.
And I think you say it's obscure. Of course, all day long I deal with estate planning attorneys, probate attorneys, so it's not obscure for me personally. But one of the things I learned going to court was I'm not an attorney, though I'm very familiar with the law and procedures, particularly in probate.
Yeah.
I found that 90% of the first off, I found 90% of the probate attorneys on a case had only done 1 or 0 cases of probate the prior year, meaning people would go to an attorney they trusted for the problem, but they weren't getting an expert in that field as a result. And same with estate planning. I found that somebody would go to an attorney who's local and would do estate planning, but that wasn't their focus. And then they got into trouble when something happened. And so I think that so many fields, law, I think medicine and real estate, are changing where you really need to get the specialist in that field to get the value for the money you spend. Otherwise, you're just not going to be happy with the results for the most part.
I think you're right. I think there's television shows really do that a disservice, like the show Suits. I remember seeing. I've only watched 2 episodes of that show just because it really ticked me off. And in one episode, they sued a class action and did a patent and did a trademark and
Yes.
represented someone in real estate.
Yes.
And my answer
Yes.
was, in those, each one of those would be 4 separate lawyers because they're so technical to do an
Yes.
eviction. It's so technical to file for a patent and litigate it. It would be 4 different people. And so I think I think you're right. Public perception is that a lawyer is a lawyer, a realtor is a realtor. And the answer is, to become a realtor, you have to have a license. To become a lawyer, you have to have a license. But to be good at it, you have to hyper-focus.
So I would, if I could correct you on your own podcast, I would say it'd probably be 4 different law firms. On Suits, the money they're talking about, I love the show. It doesn't offend me the way it would an attorney, obviously. For other reasons, I like the clothes, I like the style, I like the energy. But the things you're talking about are probably 4 different firms that specialize in those 4 issues. The firms that do eviction well are not the same firm that do estate planning. They're not the same firm that do civil litigation. I deal with this all the time. And to get paid on behalf of my customers who want to sell a house, I'm regularly referring cases to specialists. And I tell them all the time, I get that he helped you with your divorce, but that attorney is not the right guy to do an eviction, not in LA County, not in the city of Los Angeles. It's a whole different world. evicting people here than it is in, I don't know, anywhere else in America, for example.
Yeah, California eviction laws are just amazingly protective. I actually started my second internship as an attorney was doing eviction defense in San Francisco. So San Francisco, LA, horrible, horrible tenant protection laws. I don't want to say that they're bad. I want to say that if you are a real estate investor, I want to think twice about buying in those cities. But just from the counterpoint, it really does take a specialist. It absolutely does. It takes a specialist to do those things. And I get referrals from realtors, from escrow officers, from people all the time. And I think right now we're handling somewhere around 12 to 13 probates just right now. I think we took in 2 this month. So it's something that we do every day, but we're specialists, right? This is
Right.
all that I do. I don't do anything else. So from that point, I think you're right. I think that people need to find a specialist, and attorneys get stars in their eyes when they see these cases and they think, this is easy. I can figure this out. And the answer is,
Right.
you're going to figure it out. It'll take a long time.
A long time, and it's disservice to your customer. And I think that's the other part. Look, I coach realtors every day on how do we move our business. And so when a
Mhm.
customer comes to us to sell a house and it goes through probate, your success as a realtor is limited by the real estate, by the attorney handling the probate.
That's
And
right.
so the first thing I tell them to do is go on the CalBAR website, see if that attorney is in the division where they're specialized as a trust and estate attorney or not.
Yep.
Look at the website and see if they're really specializing in that area. If they're not, tell your customer you need to get a different attorney. It's just not going to work. They're not going to be happy with the result. The attorney just doesn't do enough of them to know what the process looks like. It's not they're not nice people. It's not they're not smart. They might be Harvard educated. That's got nothing to do with it. This is a specialized business. And if they don't know it, the customer's just not going to be happy at the end of the day. And I deal with this all the time.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that. It's reminding me of a case that we took in 2 months ago where there was a fairly routine case that my firm would have handled in about 4 months, which is the minimum time that it would have been handled. Would have taken us 4 months to finish this case. It took the other attorney a year and a half and 7 different hearings. It would have taken me one. And the only reason why was because it was the first time he was doing it. He was just trying to figure it out. And I
Right.
looked at all the pleadings, all the different documents that had been filed, and it was really obvious that this person had never done it before. And so they were guessing. And
Sure.
that's kind of what you do as a first year attorney. You guess and you just figure it out. So most people don't know that when attorneys become lawyers, they're actually not very good. They're brand new. They don't know how to be lawyers. They know how to pass the test to become a lawyer. It takes about 10 years to get good at it, get good at it, just like it does in anywhere. It just takes years.
But even a 10-year attorney, if he hasn't done a probate, right, he might have done 10 years of litigation and car crashes and miscellaneous household legal services, I would call it.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden it becomes the probate case. I see this all the time in probate court where the judge will say, okay, we're ready to approve your letters. Do you want a $20,000 bond for limited authority or a $800,000 bond for limited authority? And the attorney always figures out the more expensive bond costs more, will go limited authority. And I can tell you as
Oh,
a
no.
professional real estate
Mm-mm.
agent, that just costs that estate 3 or 4% of the value of the property minimum. Costs them 6 months on average minimum delay on closing the escrow, closing the probate and getting paid. And so to me, that should be a malpractice. Now again, I'm not a soapbox to harm attorneys, but I am on a soapbox to help to arm the customers to say, get an expert, because the attorney sounds like he's saying, oh yeah, let's save money on the bond. Oh, that sounds great. But it's a terrible mistake. It's penny wise and pound foolish. And that's one of the most classic mistakes I see happening all the time.
Yeah, in fact, we actually made a mistake like that. We made an error. I made a mistake in a case. And one of our routine procedures is to always request a bond, even if we don't need one. And we didn't test a client. We trusted him that he told us, and it's okay, you can do that. But it turned out that he had trouble being bonded, and it would have cost the estate 6 months of delay because you have to if you have limited authority in a probate, you have to go to court and ask the judge to allow the property to be sold. And it costs several percent of the value because you lower the amount of people who are willing to participate in that process. In
100%.
limited authority, you have to I, as the lawyer, show up in court, stand in front of the judge, and offer the house for auction. And hopefully, you as the buyer, hopefully the buyer that you've entered into an agreement with, hopefully the buyer is the highest offer, because sometimes they're not. Sometimes they
Right.
lose the sale, and then it's really bad because now it's unmet expectations. In my field, unmet expectations equals lawsuits.
I can go on for hours about court confirmation. So that's really my specialty. But just one point people don't realize is that buyer has to wait from when they clear contingencies and then you file the petition, which could be a day. Some attorneys take weeks to file the petition.
Mhm.
And then the hearing date is 30 days later. and then you're supposed to close within 10 days. That's assuming all the paper gets done in a timely manner.
Yep.
You're typically talking about 60 days that the buyer's loan is not locked in. Or
Yep.
if they're going to lock it in for 60 days, it's very expensive for the buyer. And that alone discourages buyers, the first time buyer, or what I call the retail buyer. So
Yep.
you're almost always going to get an investor looking for a discount, looking for a deal on a
Yep.
court sale. And attorneys just don't realize that costs more money than they're getting paid as attorney's fees.
Yeah, it
It
does.
really becomes counterproductive.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, that's actually one of the things, one of our values here at our firm is 10x. We want to provide 10 times the value to a client for every dollar that they give to us. And there's some probates that we simply reject. I'm just going to turn it down. Either it's too small, it's not too small money, but it's going to be so difficult for you, the customer, to be able to finish this probate. And it's going to be so high cost with me, and you're going to lose so much value along the way that I'm just not going to take it. And we want to help everybody that we possibly can. But there are some people who, for whatever reason, put themselves into a really bad situation. And we're more than happy to help people who are in kind of medium situations. But if it's super bad, we'll give you a lot of advice. And if you're willing to work with us, then we'll help you. But otherwise, no, because at that point, I can't deliver the value that I need to deliver in order to make myself feel that I'm actually doing the best thing for you.
I think this is why you present yourself as an estate planning attorney, though you also do probates, which I think probate is another way of saying somebody didn't do proper estate planning. That's the definition of probate is somebody messed up somehow, and we're trying to clean up and put the cows back in the barn after they got out.
That's
And as
right.
a real estate agent, even though most of my money is made on probate cases, I talk about estate planning because I could create so much more value for my customers if they just talk to you before they pass away or become incapacitated. They're going to save, you talk about 10x, easily 10x. The attorney's fees on a estate plan are easily 1/10 or
Less.
of the fees they're going to pay if they have to go through probate. And if it's litigated, not even to mention the emotions of probate, not even to mention the embarrassment of going to probate court and talking in front of the judge about your most intimate personal family relations.
Yeah. I remember having a probate in LA County. This is years ago. But there
Oops.
was there was one, yeah, I know, oops. There was this one city, one part of probate is publishing the fact of the death and the details of the probate in a newspaper. And I
Yes.
remember that the LA County court had designated for one small city, there was one small newspaper that could be used. You couldn't use any other newspaper. You had to use that one newspaper.
Yep.
And because of that rule, the
Yep.
publication normally costs somewhere about $700-800. For that one newspaper, it was $5,000. So
Yeah.
just to publish a small, I think it's about 200 word article in a newspaper that came out once a week, it was $5,000 because they could. The court had required that I use that newspaper. Then the house was worth $1 million, and the fees for that probate would have been somewhere between 29,000 at the low end and about 53,000 at the high end. And
Yeah.
that's just what it is for $1 million piece of property. If they had done a trust at my office for a full comprehensive estate plan is less than $6,000. Why don't just do that?
It's just amazing. Your expenses aren't in talking about the litigation where you have the brother and sister yelling, screaming. And fortunately, I don't have that in my life. I have two siblings. We get along really well. And we never had that drama. My parents have both passed. My wife's parents both passed. But I see people, the pain they go through is way more than even the money. It's just,
Yeah.
and it's hard for me to comprehend it, again, because I don't have that dysfunction in my family. But if you have dysfunction in your family, it just comes out so intensely during the probate process
Yeah.
or the guardianship. Worse than the guardianship, mom or dad are elderly and enfeebled and can't make decisions, and they didn't do a plan. And now you're fighting over her decisions as far as how she spends money and can she move and whatever. And it
Yeah.
costs, again, 5, 10, 20 times the money, as well as the heartache, which is just heartbreaking to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah. It's funny that in any sort of litigation, some people enter a court case involving their family and they're looking for a win, right? And my answer to them is there are no winners in a family-based litigation. There are
Right.
only survivors. The only
Yes.
people who win are the lawyers. And so
Yes.
I view my job largely is to keep families together because I know that once there's a lawsuit that's filed from brother against sister or sister against brother or whatever it is, one sibling suing another, it is a defining moment in a family that those people will never sit at Thanksgiving dinner again. They will never have Christmas morning again. They will never talk in a friendly way for at least 10 years because now they are at odds with each other. And it's just, there are plenty of attorneys out there, lots of them, who make all of their money off of family conflicts. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Those people are needed. I don't want to be part of that. I'd rather be part of the solution of preventing it.
And I often feel that some of those attorneys are like if you ever seen like in a movie where they have a cockfight, two roosters are going to fight to the death, and they bet
Mhm.
on that like, as a blood sport, and the people are handling the roosters and they put them in front of each other to get them mad at each other. I think the
Mhm.
attorneys do that in that they really encourage disharmony and confrontation, and you should get this and you should get that, as opposed to survival. Just get out of the situation, get the property sold,
Mhm.
take a small loss, but get out of there, because nobody is ever happy with the confrontations at the end. In my experience especially on probate,
Yeah.
because it's family, nobody's ever happy at the end. And that's why I know one of the biggest challenges you have is customers will approach you and say, "Hey, I'm interested in an estate plan," and they talk to you about it, and you tell them the fee, and it's not that the fee is that much, but it's still, you got to write a check for it and
Sure.
so on. They'll go, "Well, I'll think about it," or they sit with you and they start the plan and they don't execute it. I think if we could make them go to just pick any random probate court case in LA County and make them sit for an hour and watch it, they would crawl to your office begging you to finish their estate plan,
Yes, they would.
because they wouldn't want to be that family.
Absolutely. I wanted to go back to something that you said about litigators, about fighting in court. I know several attorneys, plenty of attorneys who are like that, but I know a few who are not. I know of a
Mhm.
few litigators who behind the scenes try their absolute best to stop people from making stupid decisions, and they make less money when they do that, but they feel better
Mm.
about it at night. But then when it comes to court, it is guns blazing, right? Because if you're in court, you have to ask for everything or you don't get it. So if you start a fight, just realize that everything comes out on the table, regardless of whether it's reasonable or not. All attacks are fair game, and the judge decides what's fair, right? You don't decide what's fair. You don't decide what's good. You don't decide what's bad. The judge does. So I recommend to people to keep it in house, meaning make the decision yourself so that other people don't make it for you.
Yeah, and I don't know how it is in the courts you go to. I know in LA, it just seems, from my observations going regularly, like the judge can do whatever they want. You
Mhm.
could say the law says this, and theoretically, they're supposed to interpret the law. There's also some discretion.
Yep.
And that's what really drives customers crazy, is the attorney will say, "Oh, the law tells us the judge has to make this decision." No, the judge can pretty much do whatever they want. That doesn't mean that you can argue with them or they don't get appealed. But day in, day out, they're making the decision. And it's never, we know what the law is. You still need the judge to agree with you and make that
Right.
decision, and then be willing to put it in writing and sign it. Otherwise, it doesn't have any authority.
Yeah. So there's two pieces to the law in probate, which is different from most other laws. It's not in contracts and with corporations, you just have what the law says and what the contract says. But in probate, you have two pieces. You have one thing, which is this legal to do? And number two, is it fair? And the judge has so much more leniency to decide what's fair. The judge can say, look, I think that this is the right thing to do, and I have the authority to do it. So I'm going to do it. And oftentimes in my field, when we're arguing in court, a lot of the things that we're putting forward to the judge is justification about why something should be done, not what can be done. Most probate attorneys who are good, they know what can be done. The question isn't what can be done. The question is what should be done. And so if someone's in court, oftentimes the argument to the judge is about what's fair and right, not necessarily what's legal, because a good attorney is going to know what's legal. If somebody else doesn't know what's legal, the judge, I, I have court cases where we have an opponent who has an opposing attorney who's brand new, doesn't know what they're not brand new, but brand new to probate, doesn't know what they're doing. I win every single one. Not because they're bad attorneys, but because they don't know where the line is where you can start arguing what's fair and right. They just don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, same with me. As a real estate agent, I'll give an example. In California, on a court sale, the law says the court does an inventory and appraisal report
Mhm.
and determines what the value of the property is, and you can't sell it for less than 9% of that number. So if you have $1 million appraisal, basically the law says you can't sell it for 900,000. I've sold property below, but the
Yeah.
reason why is I've been able to present to the court, the inventory appraisal is an exterior drive-by only. They're not allowed to go inside the property. And here's what they don't see. There's mold, there's this, there's that. Everything's torn out. I told the appraiser that, he didn't want to change his report. But at the end of the day, as a real estate broker, this is the fair value. These are the reasons why. And I've had judges agree. Now, they don't always, they have the discretion. I think that's where attorneys know what some of those gray areas or some of those
Mhm.
areas you can push. And that's why you want an attorney who is experienced with these things rather than somebody who would just read the law and then mislead their customer as a result.
Yeah, it's the word in the law is substantial justification. So just to go back on what you said, when you open a probate within 60 or 90 days, you're required to file a record with the judge that shows the value of the assets in the probate. It's called an inventory and appraisal. Inventory means a list and appraisal means a value. So you're going to list and value all the assets in the probate. Now, it's not a fixed, not a hard and fixed rule because sometimes you need more time, but it's a general rule and then you can file a supplement later. But Bill is right. When you say, hey, look, you have to sell the property within 90% of the value, you're absolutely right. Unless there's a substantial justification that you can show to the judge about why that value is incorrect. And Bill, you did it exactly right. Exactly right, which is you show pictures, you give an explanation. It's a drive-by. They're not allowed to go in. I talked to them, they refused to change the value. This is the actual value. I listed it on the MLS. I listed it for 20 days. We got 10 offers. I chose the highest one. There you go. So at that point, then the judge is probably going to approve the sale. 99% of the time, the judge would approve the sale. Only 1% of the time, if somebody's arguing back, and they're not going to approve the sale, but at that point, you have bigger problems.
And I think also the attorney makes a big difference in that. And the first time I did it, the attorney took my statement and provided a supplement to the court that the judge's attorney reviewed ahead of time and then
Mhm.
reviewed for the notes. So the
Yep.
judge had the chance to review it in a lawyerly, organized,
Yep.
professional fashion.
Yep.
And then we can make our case in court, which we did, and they win. I've seen other attorneys in at the hearing just say, hey, oh, by the way, it's not fair because blah, blah. And the judges
They
don't
don't
want to
like
be
it.
treated that way. They don't want you to argue with them. They want you to let them evaluate and make decisions. And so,
Yep.
again, it's not just even the process of being able to argue a lower price. There's a lawyerly way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And I see the wrong way arguing with a judge. I can't help it now. When I'm in court, anytime that the other broker or somebody says something and they argue with the judge, I just take a half a step away from them. Like, that's just not the thing to do. Don't
No,
ever. One
don't
rule I
argue.
know for all the realtors listening or all the lay people, if you're with your attorney and you get upset, don't argue with a judge. Just rule one, don't ever argue with them.
Judges don't like being told that they're wrong. Yeah,
Oof.
yeah.
No.
You're absolutely right. There's a phrase that I have said for many years, and I learned it in law school. And it is if you walk into court and the judge doesn't know exactly what you want, you've already lost. Adequate, an immense amount of preparation goes into every single case that we do. I have a team, a whole team. And the reason why we do that is because when we walk into court, if the judge isn't already convinced that we're right, then we've done something wrong. It's just the right thing to do. Let's switch gears here. Let's talk about a probate realtor and why that's so important, Bill, because I have worked with a lot of realtors. And whenever a client comes and they want to sell a piece of real estate, what happens probably about twice a month, and they say, hey, I'm going to work with this realtor. My very first question is, how many sales has that person done in the past calendar year? Just showing that they're still current in the area. Number
Right.
two, has this person ever done a probate sale? And plenty of realtors are just going to say, yeah, I took the class. I took it 10 years ago. No, I don't need any help. No, you do. Talk about how different a probate sale is than a regular sale.
In many cases, it's not much different.
Mhm.
As I would say, it's never a problem until it's a problem. So
Yeah,
90% of cases don't require
that's
court
exactly right.
confirmation. It's like, why do you need insurance? You probably don't need insurance, so why get it? Because you only
Right.
need insurance in case something happens. And so I think with probate is a perfect example that 90% of the time, if it's not court confirmed, if it's a standard probate with
Mhm.
full authority, and there's no apparent argument, there's no apparent litigation, there's no apparent objectors, everything looks fine. And then you propose to sell a property, there's a document you have to file called a notice of proposed action. And as long as everybody agrees, okay, we're selling this house for $900,000 or whatever it is, then anybody could do that. The problem occurs when inevitably it takes longer than expected, or the
Mhm.
house sells for less than expected.
Mhm.
The realtor maybe didn't even update the other side, the other party, the other attorney, which is their attorney too, it's their client too. All of a sudden, you get one of the brothers goes, "It's so funny. You're selling it for 900,000, but Zillow says it's worth 960. I think you should sell it for more. And they object. Now you have to go through the court confirmation process.
Mhm.
Now you have a problem.
Yep.
And so I think that the most important thing I think is having a process to communicate with all parties
Yep.
and get them all buy in on what the strategy is, what the system is. And as long as you hold that in good graces, it's not such a problem. The problem is it becomes a problem and you need court confirmation. And that's where the wheels fall off. I think the other problem I would say is that probate is marketed to realtors as a get rich quick scheme, and that you should be able to sell the properties on the cheap to get both sides. Now, my
Mm.
business is with attorneys and fiduciaries and families where I generally almost exclusively never represent the buyer where I have the
Mhm.
seller.
Yep.
Because to me, my job is to get top dollar for the property. How can I tell the buyer I'm going to get you a good deal and tell the seller I'm getting you top dollar? You can't do both.
Yeah.
There are people who pretend to do both. They'll say to the seller, I have a list of buyers that I call and tell them I have a really good deal. That's your house. They're saying it's a good deal. You don't want that.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I would say that generally it's not a problem until it's a problem. And then when it's a problem, it's really a problem because if the attorney doesn't know, like in your case, it's probably not a big issue. But most attorneys, they don't know how to publicize the sale properly. They don't know how to file it properly. They
Yep.
don't review the notes when the court notices, hey, there's some defects here. The filing, you can fix them if you do your homework ahead of time. But and as a probate realtor, I check those notes and I advise the attorney, hey, this needs to be corrected. This needs to be corrected. I'm like a free paralegal to that attorney.
That's
And so I
nice.
think that, yeah, so for attorneys, you don't need that in your firm. You have, I'm sure,
Yep.
staff and people that I would work with instead of
Yep.
you, but we would get that done. But their attorneys don't have anybody and they're relying on their own lack of knowledge and things don't
Yep.
get done. Again, to answer your question, I would say, yeah, it's probably not a problem until it is. And then it's a major problem. And those cases, those properties stay on the market for a year, 2 years, 3 years. They're a nightmare. And that's why I urge those realtors, call me. Let me see if I can help you figure out how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll co-list it if it's a court sale with them. Sometimes I'll just give them some solutions to help them get it fixed.
Yeah. It reminds me of a statement that I heard from the sound engineer for Metallica. Metallica is this huge international heavy metal band, and they're still touring, right? They're still playing. But Metallica's lead sound engineer said sound engineering is really easy until it's not. And that's the same thing that I think about a probate.
Exactly.
Probate is actually fairly routine until it's not. And when it's not, then things go awry, and they don't go awry in one way. They'll go awry in 20 different ways. So
Yes.
the best practitioners, just like what you said, everything that you described here about how you prevent things from going wrong is prevention.
Yeah.
And if it does go wrong, then you're on a much better foot. And so same thing happens in my office. I can recognize a true expert. You know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly what to do. At my office, we do the same thing. We prepare by preparing as if things will go wrong and then hoping that they don't, so that if they go wrong, then it's not such a catastrophe. Then, well, we're already halfway there. Let's just deal with it. But if it does go wrong and we're not prepared, then it is very difficult.
I also tell my team that there is nothing good that happens from the day we list a property until the day it closes. Everything is bad.
Yep.
Because all the customer wants is the money. They don't care how good you are. They want the money. They appreciate your good. They appreciate your service, but they really just want the money at the end of the day. And the money and the service. They want you to be treated nice and respectfully, but
Sure.
they really just want, if you could give them the money that day, they would take it.
Yep.
And so that's why time is your enemy. And anything you can do to speed things up. For example, one small point is the longer it's in escrow, the longer it's listed, the more likely it is one of the beneficiaries will say, hey, I think you're selling it too cheap.
Yep.
The day that happens, you run the risk of all the wheels falling off. That's why you want to move as quickly, purposefully, properly, with the right disclosure periods as quickly as you can. Because when attorneys, there's a delay of a 30-day or 60-day for continuance for something stupid, they don't realize they've put that at risk because that you just lost credibility with those errors. You lost a little credibility with the customer, and it's never good. And so I always try to urge everybody, we work on realtor time, which means to me, and that's what I tell my team, when somebody calls us, we call back within the hour or at the latest that day. If we have an answer, I'll get back to you tomorrow when I have the answer. It's funny how most attorneys, you call them on a Monday and they'll call you back like the next Monday and go, yeah, I'm returning your phone call. And I'm thinking, what the
Really?
heck is he talking about? Yeah. Because I think
It's
attorney
that
time,
long?
I think attorney time is like a week. Whereas
That's not
realtors
that's
default litigators.
in our office, the standard is 1 day, we prefer an hour.
Yeah,
Mm,
and so because I think you're dealing with customers directly, whereas I think a lot of
sure.
the attorneys don't, and because they deal with the court more than they do with their customer, and
Oh,
the
I see.
court they'll get back to you in 30 days, and you're
Yeah,
happy to get something,
sweet
right?
time.
You
Mhm.
send in an order to get signed. If you get it back, at least in LA County in a week, you're really thrilled.
Yeah,
So but real estate time, no, that doesn't work that way. And so I think our job is to pester the attorneys or pester the families. Forgive me if I'm pestering you. That's just how we work because there's nothing good that's going to happen until it closes. It's all bad news. It's all overhead. It's all expense.
yeah.
It's all feelings are getting hard. There's nothing good that can happen.
I agree with you. When we're doing a non-probate, which is a trust administration, I feel exactly the same way. That beneficiaries just want to know, when am I getting my money and what's the holdup? And there's just timelines that we have to meet. But if I can get that money out faster, people are happier. I get it. Let me switch gears here, and let's talk about your podcast, because you do a live podcast. Is that daily or weekly?
Weekly. I do a couple,
Okay.
but when I do a probate weekly, I
Okay.
do weekly.
Okay. And why a podcast? Why
You
not
know,
why
it's
not
funny.
mailers? Because I get mailers from, realtors all the time, realtors who are handing out cookies. Why a podcast?
Yeah, I've mailed postcards to attorneys I know to remind them that I'm still around. But I would say that my approach, I think I spoke about this either in the beginning or maybe off before we were recording, that my approach has been to educate people. And it does a couple things. One, I think an educated customer is a better customer for me to work with.
Mhm.
So if you know a little bit about the business, it's easier to help you because you know what you want rather than guessing what you think you want. Second, I think it gives me a way to audition for the job before other people. In my experience, many real estate agents have to go on a presentation. They're one of five realtors auditioning for the job. More commonly, I get attorneys and call me and say, "Hey, I had this case. Can you help us with it? Can you list the property?"
Yeah,
I've already been selected to do it because they need my expertise on what they're working on. So the podcast gives me a chance to showcase my skill and knowledge. It
sure.
also is kind of a backhanded way to meet people and to show people what I do.
It's really good. It's a good plan. That's actually why we do a podcast specifically, is to showcase other people's talents and help people understand that we're trying to give them value. Just give I my theory of marketing is to give people as much as I possibly can, and then let people select out. And that's totally fine. If I give people as much information as they need to go do their own estate plan, go for it. You can be your own lawyer if you want, go ahead. But if I give people information and help them understand what are the lines and what do they need to do, then maybe they'll come here and maybe they won't. That's okay.
The way I would rephrase that is there's nothing that I'm telling you that you can't do on your own. You just can't do it on
Exactly.
your own. And I think
That's a
that's
good phrase. I think I'm going to steal that one, Bill. Thanks.
I got from somebody. I use it so much I forget who it was, but I think I coach real estate agents on this process all the time, and I've
Mhm.
had people ask me like, "Why do you do it?" I don't sell coaching, I don't
Mhm.
sell data. I don't. The only thing I sell is I'm a real estate broker, and I represent families and attorneys in selling property. I don't sell anything else. And the other people who do podcasts in this area are selling something. And
Yeah,
people ask me, "How? Why do you do this?" Number one, I'll be honest with you, it's fun. I
it
really
is fun.
enjoy. I, this is work. I'm chatting with you about my favorite passion and work lives, and I'm not working in a coal mine. I'm not pulling up. This is fun. I enjoy it, and I think also I enjoy the education. I enjoy learning from you. I think just today, a couple little tidbits. I think that makes the business more fun, and I know that I help people because they call me all the time and say, "Hey, I heard your podcast, and I have a problem, and can you help me?" And I always tell people 90% of the phone calls I get I could answer their question, direct them to somebody, have nothing to
Mhm.
do with it. Refer them to an attorney, refer them to a service, help them with the right publication service, for example. I can't practice law or give legal advice, but I can refer them to somebody who can. And so
Yeah,
I'm glad to do that. And occasionally I get people call me and say, "Hey, I really need you to help me sell this property," or "I'm a realtor and it's a court confirmation case. And so we'll co-list the property together." I get a lot of those phone calls.
yeah. And that's is really important. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I really do. There's some mentors that I have who have said just put value into the market, and a lot of attorneys don't want to do that because they think that they hold the secret sauce, and they
Right.
don't. All things that attorneys learn are from books, and books are easily reproduced. And so, really, I think that you're doing the right thing, because the books can't share everything.
Right.
Books can't share genuine human connection. Books can't share trust. Books can't share experience. Books can't share background. Books can't share passion. I mean, I can see this is your passion. This is what this is what you love to do, right? You love to work with people. You love to make connections. I remember speaking to someone and them asking me, what is the mark of a good realtor? And I said, it's somebody that can save the deal. Somebody that has a good connection and somebody that can save the deal. It's really, in my opinion, the mark of a great realtor is someone that if there's some problem that they can get the right people on the phone at the right time, and those people will pick up and they'll show up because the
Right.
realtor is there to make sure that the deal goes through. Yeah.
I think part of that is also knowing the right people. Solving the
Exactly.
problem.
Yep.
Oftentimes, I'm not doing anything more than bring somebody else in, but that somebody else is really good at what they do. The right
Sure.
eviction attorney, the right title company for that particular issue. I'll share with you. You go back a little bit to about giving away the secret sauce. I went to a networking event once, the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. They have a chapter in Long Beach, and they do a monthly event. And the topic was Hegstead petitions. Now, I went there for a networking event. For people that know, Hegstead means we did an estate plan, and for some reason, this asset didn't get in the plan. Either we forgot to put it in, or we took it out and forgot to put it back in. And there are ways that, with a proper attorney, I'm sure it's something you guys do in your office, you can get this asset put back in the plan and treated the way that you wanted to. And one of the leading attorneys in Long Beach was the speaker. He not only talked about it, but he gave every attorney in the room a sample of a pleading he had done that laid out how to get these particular things done. And I thought, and I asked him this, I actually interviewed him on my podcast, said, I find it interesting that you actually gave out the copy of the pleading. Every attorney now could take yours and re-word process it as their own. He said, yeah, but they're not me. The customer comes to me to get the job done. They don't come to me because I have the template. You have the template. You can't do anything with it. This other attorney has a template. They don't trust him. They come to me and they get that I know what I'm doing. And that's the distinction, I think, is the combination of the technology and the forms and the people and the Rolodex. But at the end of the day, it's a personal business. And I think that's important.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, a Hegstead petition, just for the public, is, you're absolutely right. It is where you create a trust, but for some reason the asset is not in the trust at the time of death. We have to ask the court to put that asset into the trust. It's possible, but it's expensive, but it can be done. I'm doing 2 right now. And so it's just a question of what can you do? Can you put it in beforehand and leave it in? Then you don't have to deal with that extra expense, but you're absolutely right. It is a form. It is not a simple form, but plenty of attorneys do them. But people don't come to me for a Hegstead. They come to me for a solution. They come to me because of who we are, because they trust us.
And so where I work with attorneys is I track, for example, every filing in LA County. And I don't track every county, but I do track LA 100%, every filing. So I was listening to some attorneys talk about a problem one day, and they said, all you need is a Hegstead. That's easier than a probate. And so they should do a Hegstead. And I said, well, yeah, but LA County was scheduling Hegstead petitions 6 months out versus probates they were scheduling within 30 days. So even though a Hegstead is easier, you're not going to get in front of the court for 6 months. You could do a probate in a shorter time period. And so that's where there's the law and there's then the practice of the law that's in your local area. And what you have to do, I think, is have a input on both of those.
Yeah. When do you want to sell? Is it more important that you sell? Is it more important that you get the money out faster? Because in a Hegstead, you can't sell for 6 months, but in a probate, you can sell in 3. And then the timeline might be the trust getting the money out will be a little bit faster. If you want to sell faster, it has to be the probate.
Yeah.
Bill, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much. If people want to find your podcast or find you, how do they find you? And what sort of people are you looking for to contact you?
My podcast, Probate Weekly, you can go to www.probateweekly.com and sign up there to get subscribed. It's free and you'll get notifications. You can scroll down and there's audio versions as well as past episodes. I'm at Bill Gross Probate on all the social media, so you can reach out there. And I'd say if you have any questions regarding probate, whether you're a family with challenges or questions, or you're a real estate agent or an attorney and have some questions on professional level, I'm glad to help. I'm glad to help answer any questions I can or help any way I can anytime.
Thanks so much. Bill, thank you for coming on and being on my podcast. Really appreciate that. This has been The Keys to Your Legacy. We are a podcast where we talk about trust and estates issues. You can find us on Audible, Spotify, anywhere where podcasts can be found. We've started a Facebook group now called Keys to Your Legacy. Go ahead and check that out and subscribe so that you can follow along so that we can help you develop the keys to your legacy. Thank you so much.
You've been tuning into The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, keyslawgroup.com. Thank you for your positive